The distress signal came through at 0400 hours, pulling Captain Elena Rivera from a restless sleep. She sat up in her quarters aboard the Odyssey and touched the communication panel beside her bed. The message was broken, filled with static and fear. "This is Research Station Gamma 7. Under attack. Evacuation protocols. God help us." Then silence. Elena pulled on her uniform and rushed to the bridge. Her crew was already gathering, their faces showing worry in the dim emergency lighting. The Odyssey was a human exploration vessel, one of only 12 that Earth had contributed to the Galactic Council's deep space program. They were 3 days from the nearest Council military ship. "Get me everything on that station," Elena ordered as she dropped into the captain's chair. Her second officer, Lieutenant James Park, worked the console quickly. "Station Gamma 7, Varathia Moon, Scientific Research Outpost. Population 47, mixed species. They've been studying the local wildlife for 6 months. Set course immediately, maximum speed." The Odyssey jumped to faster-than-light travel, crossing the void between stars in a blur of twisted space. Elena used the travel time to review what little information existed about Varathia. It was a jungle moon, orbiting a gas giant in the Outer Rim territories. The atmosphere was breathable, the forests were thick, and the native life was largely undocumented. 36 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace near the green and blue moon. The research station sat on a cleared plateau surrounded by towering trees with purple leaves. From orbit, everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful. "I'm not reading any life signs," Park reported, his voice tight with concern. "Take us down," Elena said. The Odyssey descended through thick clouds and landed beside the research station. The buildings were intact, but the front gate hung open. Scorch marks blackened the walls. Equipment lay scattered across the ground as if people had dropped everything and run. Elena assembled a landing team. Besides herself and Park, she brought Dr. Sarah Chen, their xenobiologist, and 4 security officers. They wore light armor and carried defensive weapons, but Elena hoped they wouldn't need them. The station was a graveyard of abandoned work. In the main lab, Chen found research notes scattered across desks. Half-eaten meals sat cold on plates. A chair was knocked over, lying on its side. "Whatever happened, it happened fast," Chen said, picking up a data tablet. Her eyes moved rapidly as she read. They were studying something they called razor wings, large predatory birds native to this moon. "Define large," Elena asked. Chen swallowed hard. 6 meters tall, sharp metallic feathers that can cut through starship plating. Extremely territorial, and according to these notes, highly aggressive toward any sentient species. A sound echoed from outside, a screeching cry that made Elena's blood run cold. It was like metal scraping against metal, mixed with the shriek of a hummingbird. The team moved to the windows. Through the purple canopy of the forest, something massive moved. Elena caught a glimpse of silver feathers reflecting the sun, a body as large as a ground transport, wings that blotted out the light. "Back to the ship," one of the security officers whispered urgently. "We need to leave now." Before Elena could respond, the Odyssey's communication system crackled to life. A new ship had arrived in orbit, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention, human vessel. This is Ambassador Zeltoth of the Galactic Council. You are ordered to evacuate the surface immediately." Elena touched her comm badge. "This is Captain Rivera. We just arrived. We're investigating the disappearance of the research team." "There is nothing to investigate, Captain. The research team evacuated 3 days ago after multiple fatal encounters with the native predators. This moon has been designated a Level 5 threat zone. We are preparing to sterilize the surface from orbit." "Sterilize?" Chen's face went pale. "They're going to kill everything on this moon?" Elena felt anger rising in her chest. "Ambassador, you can't just destroy an entire ecosystem." "The decision has been made. The razor wings are too dangerous to exist near civilized space. They have killed 17 researchers across 3 separate expeditions. The species shows no signs of intelligence and cannot be reasoned with. Evacuation protocols are in effect. Elena looked at Chen, who was still reading through the research notes. The xenobiologist's expression had changed from fear to fascination. "Captain," Chen said quietly, "these notes, the researchers built this station directly over what appears to be breeding grounds. The attacks only started after they began drilling for geological samples." "So the creatures were defending their nests?" "That's what it looks like, but the researchers panicked and used lethal force first. The razor wings responded to the threat." Another screech came from the forest, closer this time. Through the window, Elena saw movement in the clearing beyond the station. A razor wing stepped into view, and Elena's breath caught in her throat. It was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Its body was covered in feathers that looked like polished steel, each one razor-sharp and gleaming. Its eyes were intelligent, bright gold, watching the station with clear awareness. Its talons could tear through concrete, but there was something in the way it moved, careful and deliberate, that didn't speak of mindless aggression. "Ambassador," Elena said into her comm, "I request a delay in the sterilization protocol. 24 hours to conduct a proper evaluation." "Denied, Captain. The risk is too great. You have 1 hour to evacuate before we begin orbital bombardment." Elena made a decision that would change everything. "Then you'll have to wait, Ambassador. I'm not leaving until I understand what really happened here." She could hear the shock in Zeltov's voice. "Captain, I must warn you that interfering with Council security protocols is a serious violation." "Noted. Rivera, out." She cut the communication and turned to her team. Most of them looked at her like she had lost her mind. But Chen was nodding, understanding in her eyes. "What's the plan, Captain?" Park asked. Elena watched the razor wing through the window. It had moved closer, its head tilted as if studying them just as they studied it. In that moment, she remembered something from her childhood on Earth. Her grandfather had been a wildlife ranger in the African preserves. He'd taught her that the most dangerous animals weren't the ones that attacked without reason. They were the ones that humans didn't bother to understand. "We find the nest," Elena said. "Chen, bring medical supplies and scanning equipment. Park, you're with us. Everyone else, stay here and monitor our position." "Captain, with respect, this is insane," one of the security officers said. Elena smiled grimly. "Probably, but that's never stopped humans before." She grabbed a field kit and headed for the door. As she stepped outside into the thick, humid air of Varathia, the razor wing's golden eyes locked onto her. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Elena did something that no one in the galaxy expected. She took a step forward, her hands empty and open, walking straight toward the creature that had terrorized 3 expeditions. "Easy," she whispered, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "I'm not here to hurt you." The razor wing watched her approach, its metal feathers rattling softly. One wrong move and those feathers could cut her in half. Behind her, Elena heard Chen's sharp intake of breath and Park's muttered prayer. But Elena kept walking, remembering her grandfather's words. "Fear makes predators out of protectors. If you want to understand something dangerous, you have to see past your fear to what's really there." The razor wing screeched, loud and piercing. But it didn't attack. Instead, it turned and began walking toward the forest, looking back over its shoulder at Elena. It was waiting for her to follow. Against every regulation, against common sense, against the advice of the entire Galactic Council, Elena followed the creature into the purple jungle. And somewhere in orbit above, Ambassador Zeltoth watched in disbelief as a human walked willingly into the territory of the galaxy's most feared predator. The clock was ticking. In 1 hour, the orbital bombardment would begin. But Elena had made her choice. Sometimes understanding was worth the risk. Sometimes monsters were just misunderstood. And sometimes it took a human to see the difference. The jungle of Varathia was unlike anything Elena had seen before. Purple leaves filtered the sunlight into soft violet shadows. Strange insects buzzed through the air, their wings leaving trails of phosphorescent light. The razor wing moved ahead of them with surprising grace for something so large, its metal feathers making soft chiming sounds as they brushed against branches. Chen and Park followed close behind Elena, their scanners constantly recording. Every few minutes, Park would glance at his chronometer and whisper the time remaining. 45 minutes, 40 minutes, 35. The razor wing led them deeper into the forest until they reached a massive clearing. In the center, nestled among ancient trees, was a structure that took Elena's breath away. It wasn't quite a nest and wasn't quite a building. The razor wings had woven branches, metal-rich vines, and their own shed feathers into something that looked almost architectural. "My God," Chen whispered, her scanner working overtime. "This isn't just instinct, this is construction, design." Inside the structure, Elena could see smaller razor wings. Juveniles, she realized. There were 3 of them, and they weren't moving right. One lay on its side, its breathing shallow. Another had a damaged wing, the feathers bent at wrong angles. The third was trying to care for its siblings, but it was clearly exhausted. The adult razor wing that had led them here moved to its young and made a soft, mournful sound. Then it turned back to Elena, its golden eyes pleading in a way that transcended species. "The drilling," Chen said quietly, reading her scanner. "It caused a partial collapse in the underground cavern system. These juveniles were trapped, they're injured and dehydrated." Elena understood immediately. The researchers hadn't just built on breeding grounds. They'd accidentally hurt the children. Every attack, every act of aggression had been a parent trying desperately to protect its injured young. "We need to help them," Elena said. "Captain," Park's voice was tight, "we have 28 minutes before the bombardment begins." Elena looked at the adult razor wing, at the trust in those alien eyes. A trust that came despite everything humans and other species had done. She made a decision. "Chen, break out the medical supplies. Park, contact the Odyssey. Tell them to bring the full medical bay down here on the shuttle." "And the ambassador?" Park asked. "Tell him if he starts the bombardment, he'll be killing humans too. Buy us time." For the next 20 minutes, Elena worked faster than she ever had in her life. She approached the first juvenile slowly, her hands open. The adult razor wing watched her every move. Chen prepared water laced with electrolytes and nutrients. Together, they carefully tended to the injured creatures. The juvenile with the broken wing was the most challenging. Its feathers were sharper than surgical scalpels, making it dangerous just to get close. But Elena remembered watching her grandfather set a lion's broken leg once. Predators understood gentleness when it came with calm confidence. "It's okay," she murmured to the young razorwing. "We're here to help." The creature watched her with fever-bright eyes as she carefully realigned the wing. Chen used a bonding agent designed for metallic composites to stabilize the damaged feathers. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold. Park's comm crackled. "Captain, Ambassador Zeltoth is demanding an immediate evacuation. He says he's already delayed the bombardment twice on behalf of the human government, but he can't wait any longer." Above them, through breaks in the canopy, Elena could see ships in orbit. Weapons charging, moments from firing. The adult razorwing suddenly spread its massive wings and launched itself into the air. It climbed higher and higher until it was visible from orbit, placing itself between the ships and the forest below. Its metal feathers caught the sun, creating a blinding display of reflected light. "It knows," Chen breathed. "It understands the threat." Elena's comm exploded with voices. Zeltoth's panicked tones, the Odyssey's crew reporting sensor readings, and other council ships arguing about protocol. But Elena ignored them all. She finished treating the last juvenile and watched as it struggled to its feet, weak but alive. "Ambassador," Elena said calmly into her comm, "you need to see this." Within an hour, shuttles landed in the clearing. Ambassador Zeltoth emerged, flanked by guards. He was a tall, crystalline being, his body reflecting light in rainbow patterns. His species, the Velshara, were known for their military prowess and logical thinking. Emotions, especially ones like compassion, were considered weaknesses. "Captain Rivera," he said, his voice resonating like chimes. "You have violated direct orders and endangered—" He stopped. The adult razorwing had landed beside Elena, standing close enough that its wing brushed against her shoulder. The juveniles were drinking water and eating the nutrition paste Chen had prepared. The entire scene was impossible by galactic standards. "They're not mindless killers," Elena said quietly. "They're parents. The researchers accidentally hurt their children, and they responded the only way they knew how. We caused this, and we can fix it." Zeltoth's crystalline body darkened, a sign of deep thought in his species. "This has never been documented before. A human standing peacefully beside a razorwing. The creature appears to trust you. Because I showed it, I meant no harm." "Impossible. These creatures have attacked on sight every time." Chen stepped forward with her data tablet. "With respect, Ambassador, they attacked in defense. Every recorded incident occurred in or near nesting grounds. When researchers used weapons first, the razorwings responded with lethal force. It's not aggression, it's protection." Over the next 3 days, something remarkable happened. The footage Chen had recorded spread through the galactic network faster than light itself. Beings across 1,000 worlds watched in amazement as Elena Rivera, a human, cared for creatures that had terrorized 3 expeditions. The adult razorwing, which Elena had begun calling Tempest because of the way its feathers sounded in the wind, started bringing them offerings. Small prey animals, interesting rocks, pieces of metal-rich bark. Park, who had studied animal behavior in his youth, recognized it immediately. "It's gift-giving," he explained to the gathered council observers. "On Earth, intelligent species like crows and dolphins do this to form bonds with humans. Tempest is trying to reciprocate our help." The galactic community didn't know how to process this information. The Kritok Empire, insectoid beings who prided themselves on their warrior culture, issued formal statements calling humans dangerously unstable for approaching such threats unarmed. The aquatic Velshara collective recalled their citizens from human-controlled space, fearing that human recklessness might be contagious. But others saw opportunity. Xenobiologists from a dozen species requested permission to visit Varathia. The Galactic Council, still uncertain but unwilling to destroy a potentially intelligent species, agreed to a compromise. They would allow Elena to establish a research sanctuary on Varathia, but only humans could staff it. If the razorwings killed anyone, the moon would be immediately sterilized. Elena accepted the terms. Within 6 months, the Varathia sanctuary was born. Elena brought in volunteers from Earth, carefully selecting people with experience in wildlife management, animal rescue, and conservation. They came from every continent: former zookeepers, marine biologists, park rangers, and veterinarians. All of them shared one thing: they didn't see the razorwings as monsters. The sanctuary grew slowly. Tempest was the first to fully bond with humans, but others followed. The juveniles Elena had saved grew strong and began interacting with the human staff. More razorwings emerged from the deep forest, curious about these strange beings who showed no fear, but also no aggression. Dr. Chen made breakthrough after breakthrough in understanding razorwing communication. They couldn't speak, but they used a complex system of feather displays, specific screeches, and body language. Chen developed a basic translation system that allowed limited two-way communication. The day Chen successfully asked Tempest a question and received a clear answer was the day everything changed. She asked, using the translation device in specific gestures, "Are you hungry?" Tempest cocked its massive head, then deliberately shook it side to side. A clear no, Chen nearly cried. They understand abstract concepts. They can communicate yes and no. That's theory of mind. That's intelligence. Park tried next. Can you show us your home? Tempest led them deeper into the forest than they'd ever gone, to a vast network of interconnected structures. It was a razor-wing city hidden in the canopy. Dozens of the creatures lived there in what appeared to be family groups. They had areas for sleeping, areas for storing food, and even what looked like communal spaces. This is incredible, Elena said, recording everything. They have culture, society. They're not just intelligent, they're a civilization. The discovery should have changed everything immediately, but change in the galaxy moves slowly. Many species simply refuse to believe that something so dangerous could also be so sophisticated. They pointed out that intelligence didn't equal peacefulness, that the razor wings had still killed researchers. Then came the migration. Every Varathian year, massive herds of six-legged herbivores migrated across the continent, passing directly through the sanctuary grounds. They brought with them their own predators, pack-hunting creatures called shrikes that made the razor wings look gentle. Shrikes attacked anything that moved, working in coordinated groups of 30 or more. The sanctuary's human staff prepared to evacuate, but Tempest and the other bonded razor wings refused to leave. Instead, they positioned themselves around the human buildings. When the shrikes came, the razor wings fought. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing Elena had ever witnessed. Tempest led 12 other razor wings in a defensive formation around the sanctuary, their metal feathers flashing in the sun. They moved with coordination and purpose, protecting not their nesting grounds, but their human friends. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the shrikes retreated, leaving the sanctuary untouched. Tempest and the others were wounded, but alive. Elena and her team worked through the night, treating injuries and providing care. The footage of razor wings fighting to protect humans spread across the galaxy even faster than the first videos. This time the reaction was different. Species that had mocked humanity's approach fell silent. Questions arose that no one could easily answer. If the razor wings were just beasts, why did they defend humans? If they were mindless killers, how did they form bonds? If they were too dangerous to exist, why were they capable of such loyalty? Ambassador Zeltoth returned to Varathia a month after the migration. He found Elena sitting beside Tempest in the evening light, the massive creature resting its head near her shoulder. "I owe you an apology, Captain Rivera," he said. "My species prides itself on logic, but we were illogical. We saw danger and assumed malice. You saw danger and looked for understanding." Elena smiled. "We're not special, Ambassador. Humans just never learn to see these creatures as monsters. We have a saying on Earth. There's no such thing as a bad dog, only bad owners. Maybe the same is true across the stars." Zeltoth's crystalline body brightened, a sign of respect in his culture. "Perhaps, but it took humans to teach us that lesson." As he left, Elena stroked Tempest's metallic feathers, feeling the warmth beneath the sharp edges. The galaxy was starting to understand what she had known from the beginning. Fear was the real monster. Understanding was the cure. And somehow, surprisingly, it had taken humanity to show the galaxy how to be brave enough to care. The message came encrypted and anonymous, appearing on Elena's private terminal 3 months after the migration battle. It contained no words, only a video file. She almost deleted it, assuming it was spam, but something made her open it. The video showed a massive underground facility carved from dark rock. In cage after cage, creatures from across the galaxy paced in tiny spaces or lay motionless under heavy sedation. Elena recognized some of them from xenobiology databases. A void serpent, compressed into a space barely large enough for its body. A juvenile thunder lizard from the volcanic moons of Cracks. Dozens of species, all rare, all deadly, all suffering. At the end of the video, a single sentence appeared. "Your razor wings would look magnificent in my collection. Z." Elena's blood ran cold. She immediately called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. Chen, Park, and the sanctuary security chief, a former Earth military officer named Jackson Williams, gathered in the command center. "Who sent this?" Williams asked, his scarred face grim. "I don't know, but I'm having our systems trace the signal," Elena replied. "Whoever they are, they know about our work, and they want our razor wings." Chen pulled up files on illegal wildlife trafficking in the galaxy. There are cartels that deal in exotic creatures, but this level of collection suggests serious resources. Someone very wealthy, very powerful, and very dangerous. The trace came back within an hour, but it only led to a dead end in the outer colonies. However, it did give them a name that made Williams curse under his breath. "Zarketh," he said. "I've heard stories. He's a Nexalon crime lord, runs half the illegal trade in the Outer Rim. If he's interested in the razor wings, we're in serious trouble." Nexalons were a reptilian species known for their patience and cruelty. Zarketh had built an empire over 2 centuries, collecting the galaxy's most dangerous creatures like trophies. He kept them in stasis, displayed like art, showing off his power by possessing things that could kill him. "He's never successfully kept a razor wing before," Chen said, reading through the files. 3 attempts. All 3 times, the razor wing either died in captivity or killed its captors before dying itself. "So why try again?" Park asked. Elena knew the answer immediately. "Because now we've shown it's possible. He doesn't just want a razor wing. He wants to know how we bonded with them. He wants to own that connection." They increased security around the sanctuary. Williams brought in automated defense systems and trained the staff in emergency protocols. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. Elena almost convinced herself that Zarketh's message had been an empty threat. Then the attack came. It was during the early morning shift change, when the staff was most distracted. The first sign was the sanctuary's power grid failing. Emergency systems kicked in, but for 30 seconds, everything was dark. In that darkness, shapes moved. Williams' voice crackled over the comm. "We're under attack. Automated weapons platforms, military grade. They're suppressing the razor wing nesting areas with some kind of sonic weapon. The razor wings are grounded." Elena ran to the nearest window and saw the nightmare unfolding. Machines she didn't recognize had landed in the clearing, projecting waves of sound that made the razor wings screech in pain and confusion. Commandos in powered armor moved through the chaos with professional efficiency, heading straight for the juvenile razor wings. "They're going for the young ones," Elena shouted into her comm. "All personnel, protect the juveniles." But the sanctuary staff were researchers and animal handlers, not soldiers. The commandos moved through them like they weren't even there, using non-lethal weapons to knock humans aside. They had specific orders: take the juveniles, harm no humans. Zarketh was being careful. Killing humans would bring the full weight of Earth's military down on him. Elena grabbed a medical kit and ran toward the nesting area where Tempest's youngest offspring nested. She saw the massive razor wing trying desperately to reach her children, but the sonic weapons kept driving her back. The creature's metal feathers were vibrating at frequencies that must have been agonizing. A commando reached the nest first. He had a large containment device designed to hold a juvenile razor wing. Elena threw herself at him, even knowing it was useless. He swatted her aside with one armored hand, and she hit the ground hard. Through blurred vision, she saw him activate the containment field around Tempest's youngest. The juvenile screeched in terror and confusion, its small wings beating uselessly against the energy barrier. Then Tempest did something Elena had never seen before. Despite the pain from the sonic weapons, despite every instinct telling her to retreat, the massive razor wing charged forward. Her metal feathers, vibrating from the sonic assault, began to ring with a specific frequency. Other razor wings picked up the sound, adding their voices to it. Together, they created a harmonic resonance that shattered the sonic weapons. The machines exploded in sparks and smoke. Freed from the suppression, the Razor Wings attacked. What happened next would be debated in military academies for years. The commandos had the best training, the finest equipment, and specific intelligence about Razor Wing behavior. But they had never faced Razor Wings who chose to protect rather than just defend. They had never encountered creatures that fought not from instinct, but from love. Tempest and her companions moved with terrible purpose. They didn't kill the commandos, Elena realized. They were specifically targeting weapons and equipment, disabling rather than destroying. The Razor Wings had learned from watching the humans. They understood the difference between defense and murder. But while the Razor Wings fought valiantly, two commandos managed to reach their ship with containment fields holding two juvenile Razor Wings. The ship lifted off before anyone could stop it, disappearing into the atmosphere. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena pulled herself to her feet and ran to Tempest. The massive Razor Wing was bleeding from dozens of small wounds, her feathers damaged from the sonic assault. But the look in her golden eyes was something Elena had seen before, in the eyes of human parents who had lost their children. "I'm so sorry," Elena whispered, her hand on Tempest's feathered side. "I'm so sorry. I promised to protect them." Tempest made a sound Elena had never heard before. It was a keening cry, filled with anguish and rage. The other Razor Wings picked up the sound, and the entire forest seemed to mourn. Chen found Elena an hour later, sitting with Tempest while Williams coordinated with Galactic Council security. "Captain, we've identified the ship. It's registered to a shell company, but the trail leads back to Zarketh. He's taken them to his private station in the Obsidian sector." "That's neutral space," Park said, joining them. "No jurisdiction. The Council can't touch him there without starting a diplomatic incident." Elena looked at Tempest. The Razor Wing was staring toward the sky, toward where her children had disappeared. In that moment, Elena made a decision that was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "Then we don't ask the Council for help," she said. "We go get them ourselves." William shook his head. "Captain, that's suicide. Zarketh Station is a fortress. He's got private military, automated defenses, and 2 centuries of paranoia built into every wall." "I don't care," Elena said. "Those children trusted us to keep them safe. I'm not abandoning them." Chen was already working on her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. "We might have an advantage. The juveniles have tracking implants, medical monitors we installed when they were born. I can use them to locate the juveniles inside the station." "And how do we get inside a fortress?" Park asked. Elena looked at Tempest again. The Razor Wing was still staring at the sky, but now she was also watching Elena with those intelligent golden eyes. An idea began forming, crazy and dangerous and absolutely necessary. "We ask for help," Elena said. "Not from the Council, from them." She gestured to the Razor Wings gathered around them. Tempest and her companions, and all the others who had bonded with the Sanctuary staff over the past months. Creatures the galaxy feared, beings that ships fled from, predators that had terrorized 3 expeditions, family members who wanted their children back. Williams understood first, and his expression shifted from skepticism to something like awe. "You want to take the Razor Wings with us? In ships?" "Razor Wings can survive in vacuum for short periods," Chen said, getting excited. "Their feathers create a kind of magnetic field that protects them. If we modified our shuttles, removed the environmental systems and—" "You're talking about turning a rescue mission into an invasion force," Park interrupted. "The Odyssey isn't a warship." "No," Elena agreed, "but Razor Wings are." She turned to Tempest and pulled out Chen's translation device. She had never attempted to communicate something this complex before, but she had to try. Using gestures, images on her tablet, and specific sound patterns, she asked a question. "Your children are taken. Bad beings have them. I want to bring them home. Will you come with us? Tempest's response was immediate. She spread her massive wings and screeched, a sound that mixed fury and determination in equal measure. The other razor wings responded in kind. The message was clear. They were going to war. Over the next 2 days, the sanctuary became a staging ground for the most unusual military operation in galactic history. Williams modified 3 shuttles to carry razor wings, removing life support systems and reinforcing the hulls. Chen programmed the tracking signals to guide them directly to the juveniles. Elena contacted every human ship in the sector, calling in favors and making promises. News of the attack had spread through human networks like wildfire. Volunteers came from everywhere: scientists, merchants, even a few Earth military vessels on leave. They all wanted to help. The galaxy might see the razor wings as monsters, but to humans, they were friends. And you didn't abandon friends. The small fleet assembled in orbit around Varathia, 5 ships total, including the Odyssey. Not enough to assault a fortress by conventional means, but Elena wasn't planning a conventional assault. As the ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, Ambassador Zeltoth sent a final message. Captain Rivera, I must officially state that the Galactic Council cannot support this action. Attacking a neutral station would be an act of piracy. Elena smiled grimly at the screen. Understood, Ambassador. However, Zeltoth continued, his crystalline body brightening slightly, I must also note that my sensors are experiencing unusual interference in this sector. I have no clear readings on what may or may not be happening here. Such unfortunate technical difficulties. Elena's smile grew. Thank you, Ambassador. As the Odyssey jumped to hyperspace with Tempest and 5 other razor wings secured in the cargo bay, Elena thought about what lay ahead. Zarketh had 2 juvenile razor wings, but he was about to learn something that no amount of money or power could buy. You could capture a razor wing, you could even cage one, but their bonds weren't chains that could be broken with force. They were family, and family always came home. The hunt had begun. The assault on Zarketh Station had become legend in the 6 months since it happened. 5 human ships, 30 crew members, and 6 razor wings had penetrated the most secure private facility in the Obsidian sector. They had rescued not just the 2 stolen juveniles, but 17 other species that Zarketh had kept imprisoned in his menagerie. Zarketh himself had made a fatal mistake. When the razor wings breached his station, he had released his sedated creatures, hoping they would attack the invaders. Instead, the freed predators sensed the calm presence of humans and the protective stance of the razor wings. They understood immediately who the real threat was. Zarketh's body was never recovered. His empire collapsed within weeks. Now Elena stood on a rebuilt platform on Varathia, watching construction crews put finishing touches on a series of new buildings. The Interstellar Conservation and Bonding Institute was taking shape, and it was more than she had ever dreamed. The dormitories are complete, Park said, joining her with a tablet full of reports. We can house 200 students and staff. The training grounds are operational, and we've received over 3,000 applications for the first class. 3,000, Elena repeated, stunned. From Earth alone, Park clarified. Once we opened applications to other species, we got another 500. Chen approached from the medical center, her face bright with excitement. The Galactic Council just sent formal confirmation. They're funding the Institute for the next 10 years, and they're requesting human assistance with 17 different dangerous species situations across the galaxy. Elena felt overwhelmed. After the rescue, word had spread faster than light itself. Planets with creature problems, species scheduled for extermination, animals too dangerous to coexist with civilization, they all started asking the same question. Could humans help? The request from the Kretok Empire had surprised everyone most. The insectoid warriors, who had once called humans dangerously unhinged, were now asking for human intervention with the void serpents in the Obsidian Nebula. The massive space-dwelling creatures had been attacking Kretok mining operations for generations. Thousands had died in the conflict. The Kretok had tried everything: weapons, barriers, relocating the serpents. Nothing worked. The human approach would be different. Instead of trying to defeat or move the void serpents, they would try to understand them. Commander Yuki Tanaka had been Elena's first choice to run the institute. The former wildlife ranger from Earth's northern territories had spent 30 years working with polar bears, wolves, and other apex predators. She had a calm presence that animals responded to, and a mind sharp enough to solve problems that baffled trained scientists. Yuki stood now in the central plaza of the new institute, addressing the first class of cadets. 30 people from Earth, ranging in age from 20 to 60. They were veterinarians, zookeepers, marine biologists, park rangers, and animal trainers. Not one of them was a soldier, though Williams had insisted on teaching them basic survival skills. "You were not chosen because you're brave," Yuki told them, her voice carrying across the plaza. "You were chosen because you understand something most of the galaxy has forgotten. Animals, even dangerous ones, are not our enemies. They're beings with needs, fears, and reasons for their behavior. Our job is to find those reasons and build bridges." The cadets stood at attention, but Elena could see the excitement in their eyes. Behind Yuki, Tempest and several other Razor Wings perched on specially designed platforms. They would be the primary training partners for this first class. Over the next 3 months, Elena watched something remarkable happen. The cadets learned not just about Razor Wing biology and behavior, but about patience, observation, and respect. They studied xenobiology, communication theory, and interspecies psychology. But most importantly, they learned to see past fear. Cadet James Park, no relation to Lieutenant Park, distinguished himself quickly. The young man from Seoul had grown up helping his grandmother rehabilitate injured birds. He approached the Razor Wings with a natural calm that reminded Elena of herself. By the end of the first month, he had bonded with a young Razor Wing named Storm, and they moved together like they had known each other for years. When the Kretok request came up for assignment, Yuki chose James and 4 other cadets. They would be the first graduates of the Institute, the first to test their training in an active crisis situation. Elena accompanied them on the journey to the Obsidian Nebula. The Kretok military presence was massive. Dozens of warships, mining platforms the size of small cities, and thousands of warriors ready for battle. General Takresh, the commanding officer, greeted them with obvious skepticism. "You are the humans who will solve what our greatest warriors could not." The insectoid warrior's mandibles clicked with something that might have been amusement or disdain. "5 young beings and no weapons?" James stepped forward, his posture respectful but confident. "With respect, General, we don't need weapons. We need understanding." "The Void Serpents understand only violence," Takresh insisted. "They have attacked our ships for 200 years. They show no signs of intelligence, no pattern of behavior beyond destruction." "May we see the attack data?" Elena asked. The Kretok provided everything: sensor logs, video footage, tactical analysis. James and his team spent 3 days reviewing it all. Finally, they called a meeting with General Takresh and his command staff. "The Void Serpents only attack ships using Type 7 mining lasers," James explained, highlighting specific frequencies on a holographic display. "These frequencies overlap with the Void Serpents' reproductive calls. You're not just making noise to them, you're screaming into their nurseries during mating season." The room fell silent. One of the Kretok scientists checked the data, then checked it again. "This cannot be," she said quietly. "We have been at war with a species because of mining equipment frequencies?" "It's worse than that," another cadet, Lisa Martinez, added gently. "The Void Serpents have been trying to communicate. These patterns here, in between attacks, they're not random. They're attempts at establishing dialogue." General Takuresh's body language shifted to something Elena didn't recognize. Later, she learned it was shame. We have killed thousands of these creatures, hunted them across 3 star systems. If what you say is true, we are not warriors defending our people. We are murderers who refuse to listen. You didn't know, Elena said carefully. Now you do. Now you can fix it. The solution was simple in theory, complex in practice. They would modify the mining equipment to use different frequencies and send a team to make contact with the Void Serpents. James volunteered immediately. Watching him prepare for the mission, Elena saw herself 6 months earlier, walking unarmed toward Tempest. The fear was the same. The courage was the same. But James had something she hadn't: training, support, and the knowledge that it could be done. His ship, a small shuttle with all weapon systems removed, drifted into the heart of the Serpent territory. The massive creatures surrounded it within minutes. On the view screen, Elena could see them clearly. Beings longer than most starships, their bodies like living galaxies, covered in bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with light. They could crush James's shuttle without effort. Instead, they circled it, curious. James activated the communication system Chen had designed. It projected light patterns based on the Void Serpent's own language. The first message was simple: we mean no harm. We want to understand. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then one of the serpents moved closer, its body creating patterns of light in response. Chen's computer translated, "Why do you hurt our young?" Elena's heart clenched. The mining lasers had been disrupting reproduction for 2 centuries. Generations of Void Serpents had been born deaf or damaged because of frequencies the Kretok didn't even know were harmful. James responded honestly, "We did not know. We are sorry. We will change. We will stop the pain." The conversation continued for hours. James learned that the Void Serpents were not just intelligent, but highly sophisticated. They navigated by sensing magnetic fields and gravitational waves. They could detect mineral deposits through solid rock. They had language, culture, and history spanning back thousands of years. They had been trying to tell the Kretok to stop for 2 centuries. When words failed, they had used the only language they thought would be understood: force. Over the next month, a miracle occurred. The Kretok modified their mining equipment. The attacks stopped immediately. More remarkably, the Void Serpents began approaching mining platforms voluntarily. They could sense mineral deposits the Kretok equipment missed. Working together, production increased by 40%, while the Serpent's habitat improved dramatically. General Takuresh visited the Institute personally to deliver the Kretok's formal thanks. He stood before Yuki and her cadets. His warrior's posture shifted to one of deep respect. "My species has existed for 10 million years," he said. "We have conquered 100 worlds. We have built an empire on strength and strategy. But we were blind. You humans who have barely left your homeworld, you saw what we could not. You taught us that the greatest strength is not in weapons, but in understanding." The story spread across the galaxy even faster than Elena's original encounter with Tempest. Requests flooded in from everywhere. The aquatic species on Tethys Prime needed help with massive creatures they called Leviathans. The mining colonies of Draxus wanted someone to mediate with the territorial fire drakes. Even the isolationist Pelthar requested assistance with aggressive plant species that was overrunning their settlements. The Institute expanded rapidly. More buildings were constructed, more staff were hired. The second class of cadets grew to 100, and they came from 12 different worlds. Not just humans now, but aliens who had watched the Void Serpent resolution and wanted to learn the human approach. Elena walked through the training grounds one evening and saw something that made her stop and stare. A young Kretok warrior was working with a juvenile razorwing, moving slowly and carefully, using the exact techniques Yuki taught. The razorwing was responding, its body language showing trust. "We are learning," General Takuresh said, appearing beside Elena. He had stayed at the Institute as an observer and increasingly as a student. It is difficult for my species. We are warriors. We are taught to see threats and eliminate them. But you humans, you are taught to see neighbors and befriend them. We have our own violence, Elena said quietly. Earth's history is full of wars and destruction. Yes, but you also have dogs, Tekresh replied. Wolves that became companions, horses that became partners. You took the most dangerous creatures on your world and made them family. This is not weakness. This is a strength we never considered. As the sun set over Varathia, casting purple light across the training grounds, Elena thought about how far they had come. 6 months ago, the galaxy wanted to exterminate the Razorwings. Now, they were teachers, helping train the next generation of xenofauna specialists. The dream was growing into something bigger than Elena had imagined. Not just a sanctuary, not just a training institute, but a fundamental shift in how the galaxy viewed the creatures they shared space with. Yuki joined her on the observation deck, watching the sunset with the satisfaction of a teacher seeing students succeed. The Pelthar request came through officially. They want a team to help with their aggressive plant situation. Plants? Elena asked, surprised. Apparently, they're mobile, carnivorous, and have been expanding into Pelthar settlements for decades. The Pelthar have tried burning them, poisoning them, and relocating entire cities. Nothing works. Elena smiled. I know just the team. Chen's been dying to work with xenobotany, and we have 3 cadets who specialized in ecology. The galaxy is learning, Yuki observed. Slowly, but they're learning. The question is, can we train people fast enough to handle all the requests? Elena thought about the 3,000 applications, the requests from 17 worlds, the reports of other species trying to adopt human techniques. We'll find a way. We always do. Below them, James and his bonded Razorwing, Storm, were practicing formation flying. The young man who had been too nervous to speak in class 3 months ago was now soaring through the air on the back of a creature the galaxy had once feared. Other cadets watched with envy and determination, knowing their turn would come. The Institute was working. The approach was spreading. And somewhere out there, on 1,000 different worlds, creatures that had been labeled as monsters were waiting for someone to see them differently, to see them the way humans did, as beings worth understanding, worth protecting, and worth calling friends. 5 years had passed since Elena first walked toward Tempest in that jungle clearing on Varathia. The galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Over 300 species that were once labeled kill on sight now lived alongside civilization, integrated through human-guided bonding programs. The Institute had graduated over 800 specialists. They worked on 200 worlds, mediating between species that had been in conflict for centuries. Razorwings partnered with exploration teams, their keen senses detecting dangers humans missed. Void Serpents worked alongside mining operations, their abilities making dangerous jobs safer and more efficient. Fire Drakes from Draxus helped with planetary terraforming, their natural heat control perfect for climate modification. Elena stood in her office, now with the official title of Director of Interspecies Integration for the Galactic Council. The view from her window showed Varathia transformed. The small sanctuary had grown into a thriving city where dozens of species lived and worked together, with hundreds of bonded creatures moving freely among the population. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Ambassador Zeltoth materialized on her view screen, his crystalline body dark with concern. Director Rivera, we have a situation. The Velshara Collective has called an emergency session of the Council. They are presenting a formal challenge to the bonding programs. What kind of challenge? Elena asked, though she had been expecting this for months. They claim that humanity is building an army of monsters, that you are creating a threat to galactic security, and they have convinced the Carthix Union and the Pelthar sovereignty to support them. Together, they represent 40% of the Council's voting power. Elena felt a cold weight in her stomach. What do they want? They are demanding that all bonded creatures be surrendered to Council control, placed in quarantine facilities until their threat level can be properly assessed. If humanity refuses, Zeltoth paused on their threatening military action. The galaxy was on the brink of war because humans had dared to make friends instead of enemies. The crisis had been building for years, Elena realized. Every success story created fear in those who relied on military strength. The Velshara were particularly troubled. Their entire culture was built on warrior traditions, on being the galaxy's protectors against dangerous forces. Humans had made those dangerous forces into allies, and the Velshara didn't know how to process that. The final trigger had been the Leviathans of Tethys Prime. The Leviathans were world-sized organisms, creatures so massive they generated their own gravity fields. They drifted through space like living planets, and the Velshara had worshipped them as destructive gods for millennia. Their religion taught that the Leviathans were untouchable, unknowable, and eternally dangerous. Then a human team made contact with one and discovered the Leviathans were not gods or monsters, but ancient beings with their own societies and purposes. More shocking, the Leviathans welcomed the contact. They had been trying to communicate with the Velshara for thousands of years, but the warrior culture had only ever responded with fear and weapons. For the Velshara, this was more than embarrassment. It was a fundamental challenge to their entire worldview. General Korshan, leader of the Velshara military caste, transmitted a message that played across every screen in Council space. His armored form filled displays, his four arms crossed in a gesture of absolute authority. Humanity claims to tame monsters through understanding, he declared, but they are creating dependencies. These creatures follow humans, obey humans, and would fight for humans if commanded. This is not friendship, this is domestication. And domesticated creatures become weapons. The message resonated with species who had always relied on military strength. Within days, anti-human protests erupted on a dozen worlds. Some aliens attacked human specialists working with bonded creatures. 3 human teams had to be evacuated under military protection. Earth's government was furious, demanding the Galactic Council condemn the attacks. The Council was paralyzed, split between those who supported the bonding programs and those who feared them. War seemed inevitable. Elena called an emergency meeting of all senior staff at the Institute. Yuki, Chen, Park, Williams, and representatives from the 50 largest bonding projects gathered in the command center. The atmosphere was tense. "We cannot fight a war," Yuki said bluntly. "Earth's military is formidable, but we are outnumbered 50 to 1. And even if we could win, it would destroy everything we have built." "We can't surrender the creatures either," Chen protested. "Putting them in quarantine facilities would be cruel. Many of them would die separated from their bonded partners, and it would prove the Velshara right, that fear should govern our choices." Williams pulled up tactical displays showing force distributions across the galaxy. The Velshara have positioned their fleets near key human worlds. This isn't a bluff. They are prepared to enforce their demands. Elena listened to the debate for an hour before she finally spoke. "We need to change the terms of the conversation. The Velshara see this as humans controlling monsters. We need to show them what it really is." "And how do we do that?" Park asked. "We invite them to learn." The room fell silent. Then Yuki started to smile, understanding dawning in her eyes. "The Interspecies Symposium. You want to teach them our techniques." "Not teach," Elena corrected. "Offer. If they believe bonding is about control, let them try it themselves. Let them discover it is about trust, respect, and mutual benefit." The proposal was radical. Inviting the people who wanted to shut down the programs to participate in those same programs seemed like madness. But Elena had learned something over 5 years of working with dangerous creatures. The biggest barriers were always internal, built from fear and misunderstanding. The formal invitation went out to every member of the anti-human coalition. The Interspecies Symposium would be held on Varathia in 30 days. Any species could send representatives to observe, participate in, and evaluate the bonding programs. Everything would be transparent. If they still believed it was dangerous afterward, Elena promised to respect their judgment. General Korshan accepted immediately. He came personally, bringing with him 50 Velshara warriors and a military observation team equipped with enough sensors to scan a small planet. The symposium began on a cool morning, with representatives from 200 species gathering in the main plaza. Bonded creatures were everywhere. Razor wings perched on buildings. Void serpents drifted in the upper atmosphere. Fire drakes basked in designated heat zones. To the Velshara delegation, it must have looked like a nightmare of barely controlled chaos. Elena opened the symposium with a simple statement. "We are not here to convince you. We are here to show you. Everything you see over the next week is real, unscripted, and available for your examination. Ask questions, test our methods, and most importantly, try it yourselves." Korshan stood, his forearms crossed. "You expect us to approach these creatures? Warriors of the Velshara do not show weakness." "Approaching with open hands is not weakness," Yuki responded calmly. "It is strength. It takes more courage to offer friendship than to raise a weapon." "Then you demonstrate," Korshan challenged. "Show us this courage." What followed was a week of demonstrations unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human specialists showed every aspect of their work, how they approached new species, how they identified behavior patterns, how they built trust through patience and consistency. The Velshara recorded everything, their sensors scanning for deception or manipulation. They found none. On the third day, a young Velshara warrior named Koratha approached Elena privately. "I wish to try," she said quietly. "My commander believes this is all performance, but I have watched. I have seen the way the creatures respond to you. There is something real here." Elena felt hope kindle. "Are you sure? If you fail, it might be seen as proof that bonding does not work for non-humans." "I am a warrior," Koratha said. "We do not fear failure. We fear never trying." The next morning, Elena brought Koratha to the training grounds. A juvenile razorwing named Echo had been selected, young enough to be less intimidating, but old enough to make independent choices. Tempest watched from a nearby perch, ready to intervene if needed. Koratha stood at the edge of the training ground, and Elena could see the conflict in her body language. Every instinct the Velshara had, every training drill, every cultural teaching, told her that the razorwing was a threat to be eliminated. "Forget what you have been taught," Elena said gently. "See Echo not as a monster or a weapon. See them as a person who is curious about you, maybe a little scared of you, but willing to meet you halfway." "I am terrified," Koratha admitted. "This goes against everything I am." "I know. That is where courage lives, in the space between fear and action." Koratha took a breath and stepped forward. Echo watched her approach, head tilted in curiosity. The young razorwing's feathers rustled softly, a sound that could have been nervousness or interest. 5 meters away, then 3, then 2. Koratha's forearms trembled. Sweat glistened on her armored skin, but she kept moving forward, one slow step at a time. When she was close enough to touch Echo, she stopped. For a long moment, Warrior and Razorwing studied each other. Then Koratha did something revolutionary. She lowered herself to the ground, reducing her height, making herself vulnerable. And she extended one hand, palm up, in the universal gesture of peace. Echo leaned forward, studying the hand. Then with deliberate care, the Razorwing pressed its beak gently against Koratha's palm. The Velshara warrior made a sound no one had heard from her species before. It was something between a laugh and a sob. Tears ran down her armored face as she stroked Echo's feathers with trembling fingers. "I feel it," she whispered. "The connection. It is real. General Korshan had watched the entire interaction, his sensors recording everything. When Koratha returned to the delegation, still shaking from the experience, he studied her for a long time. "Explain what you felt," he commanded. Koratha struggled to find words. "I felt accepted, not as a warrior or a threat, but as a being. Echo looked at me and saw someone worth knowing. And I realized I have never felt that before, not truly. Our culture teaches us that we are what we fight, but Echo taught me that we are what we choose to connect with." Over the next 4 days, 12 more Velshara attempted bonding. 9 succeeded. The 3 who failed were not attacked or hurt. The Razorwings simply chose not to connect, and the humans explained that bonding was always a choice for both parties. Rejection was not failure, it was respect for autonomy. This concept fascinated the Velshara more than anything else. In their warrior culture, strength meant domination, but humans showed strength through acceptance of boundaries. On the final day of the symposium, General Korshan stood before the assembled delegates. His posture had changed subtly over the week, less rigid, more open. "I came here believing humans were creating weapons," he said. "I was wrong. You are not creating weapons. You are creating relationships. And relationships cannot be controlled or commanded. They must be earned." He turned to face his delegation. "The Velshara have worshipped the Leviathans as gods for 10,000 years. We believed they were beyond understanding, beyond reach. But we never tried to understand them. We simply assumed they were dangerous because they were powerful. Humanity has shown us that power and danger are not the same thing, that the most powerful beings can also be the gentlest if approached with respect." The motion to place bonded creatures under council quarantine was withdrawn. In its place, the Velshara proposed something unprecedented: the Galactic Interspecies Integration Program, with funding from every member world, designed to expand the bonding programs across the galaxy. More remarkably, General Korshan requested that Koratha and the other Velshara who had successfully bonded remain at the Institute as the first non-human instructors. They would teach their people how to unlearn fear and embrace understanding. 5 years later, Elena stood in the same spot where she first approached Tempest. But now, the jungle clearing was part of a vast campus where thousands of beings from hundreds of species learned to see past their fears. Her daughter Maya ran across the grass with a juvenile razorwing chasing her playfully. The child laughed, completely unafraid, having grown up in a world where the galaxy's most feared creatures were simply neighbors and friends. Tempest, ancient now by razorwing standards, rested in the shade nearby. The massive creature's golden eyes tracked Maya's movements with gentle affection. Beside Tempest, Koratha sat in meditation, her hand resting on the razorwing's side in companionable silence. Yuki joined Elena, watching the scene with satisfaction. "We have received requests from 3 more species this week. They want to establish bonding programs with creatures on their worlds. And the Karthix Union, who supported the quarantine proposal, just sent an apology and asked if we could help them with the crystal serpents in their asteroid belts." "The galaxy is learning," Elena said. "Slowly, but yes." Chen's voice came through Elena's comm. "Director, you should see this. We just received data from the Leviathan research team. The Leviathans have shared something remarkable. They are not just intelligent, they are ancient, billions of years old. And they say they have been waiting for someone to talk to them instead of fearing them." Elena thought about that. Billions of years of loneliness ended because one species finally chose conversation over conflict. "That's what we do," she said quietly. "We listen when others only hear threats. We offer friendship when others offer weapons. Not because we are special, but because we never learned that monsters exist." Tempest made a soft sound, and Elena walked over to her oldest friend. She placed her hand on the razorwing's side, feeling the warmth beneath the metal feathers. Maya ran over and climbed onto Tempest's back, and the massive creature adjusted carefully to make the child comfortable. Across the campus, Velshara warriors trained alongside human specialists. Kretok scientists studied creature communication with former zookeepers from Earth. Species that had been at war for centuries worked together, united by the common goal of understanding rather than conquering. It had started with one human refusing to see a monster. It had grown into a movement that transformed the galaxy, not through force or technology, but through something simpler and more powerful: the willingness to see others as neighbors instead of threats. That evening, as the sun set over Varathia, Elena received a message from Earth. It was from her grandfather, the wildlife ranger who had taught her everything about working with dangerous animals. "I saw the news about the symposium," he wrote. "I'm proud of you, Elena. You took what I taught you in the African preserves and showed it to the galaxy. Remember what I always said, there are no bad animals, only scared ones. Looks like that is true across the stars." Elena smiled and looked out at the purple jungle, at the razor wings roosting in the trees, at the thousands of beings who had learned to set aside their fear. Her grandfather was right. Fear created monsters. Understanding dissolved them. And in the end, humans had not been brave enough to tame savage creatures. They had been brave enough to realize there were no savage creatures at all. Just neighbors waiting for someone to say hello.